AI poses a really interesting challenge for us because it's becoming an operating system for a lot of things. And already there's a lot of industries where like 20% or even 50% of people's time and action is in some ways dictated by the computer. Like the computer, by seeing everything, by knowing what's going on, is very powerful, suggesting what to do next. There's some really advanced areas of healthcare where this is probably actually what you want, is for the computer actually to be wiser and show what you can opt out, but you're probably going to go with what it tells you to do in lots of cases. And so in some sense, we are creating this control layer for our civilization that we are going to be following more. And I mean, is that authoritarian by its nature? Is there a way for that not to be authoritarian? How do we think about that?
Yeah. One of the most interesting questions. So there's a mathematician named Alfred North Whitehead who says that the measure of civilizational progress is the extent to which we can perform important operations of thought without thinking about them. So what is he saying there? Well, what he's saying is we should offload. He's saying like offloading is good. Example is I woke up this morning, I jammed a toothbrush in my mouth, and it wasn't because I had reason from first principles on dental health,
You
right?
might just do certain things by default.
You do certain things by default. And moreover, that is what enables you to think about other things. Like it builds up this edifice of civilization. So on the one hand, we should automate quite a lot. On the other hand, history gives us cases where we've automated too much. Normal people who don't have great evil, genetically or they weren't engaging in active malice, became concentration camp guards because they outsourced gradually, bit by bit, pieces of their moral deliberation.
Just going along with what people were doing.
Exactly. So letting people think for us can be very bad. So this introduces a very big paradox.
It's like the Stuart Mill quote, correcting and adjusting his opinion by claiming it with others. So like there's certain people who they just did automatically just to think what everyone else thinks, right?
Yeah. And Mill, I think, has a very keen observation that we tend towards passivity. Like human brain works on glucose. There's only so much glucose to go around. We're biologically wired to be passive. So AI presents this very interesting, sinister, it's very good in the sense that it can offload plausibly everything, but it's bad in the sense that it entices us to give up more and more. And so one thing I think about is like, let's make this practical. I think about what are some patterns we want to avoid. And one is like autocomplete for life. Like you're familiar with autocomplete, you write, you get another word. Like I don't want that to show up in all of life.
Which is the scary thing for some of AI. I could just suggest what to do next, right?
Yeah. And you have kids. Like I'm sure that your kids, when they use AI, engage with it actively.
We don't actually use screens very much because I'm a little bit afraid of the interactions with them. And like what, I see a lot of this AI designed as it is right now as like, it's a form of drug in some sense, right? Because basically it's trying to trigger your brain with whatever dopamine to do certain things that are the goal of the platform. And I'm willing to take risk with myself with that form of AI drug. I'm not willing to take risk with that with my kids yet until I know more about it. Maybe that's a little bit too cautious, but that's how I see it.
So I think everyone who has kids like can really understand this. There's another thing that I think sometimes about is like, let's say you go to a new city, okay? Today you can get a recommendation for a restaurant, a neighborhood, a bar that fits your energy. Like, it can do this today or maybe next month, right? But take it up a notch. Let's say that it can recommend the perfect date based on her psychological profile, her family history, all this sort of stuff. And then take it up another notch and say it can sort of script out, when should you tell the childhood story? When should you show vulnerability? When should you lean in for the kiss? And then imagine that's your whole life. And when I say this,
it'd be terrifying.
Well, that's it. Like you get this chill, right? You get this, like, you don't know exactly why you don't like it. But I think if you do, I mean, some people may think that that's optimal. I've met some people that think that
they just want to be told exactly what and when.
Exactly.
It's like a very, I guess you define it as, I don't know if beta is the right word, but it's a very cautious way of living your life.
I think it's NPCs or sheep, right? Like non-player characters.
It's the NPC non-player character thing. There's something like that, but that's scary because the average person maybe is that way and they do want to be led.
Well, so I'm hoping that examples like that can kind of shake us out of this and say, look, we need to hold on to this precious idea of autonomy, which is to say, individuals deliberating on and acting upon their own version of the good and not being coerced by others. In other words, not being made the agent of another. AI is very good at controlling a choice architecture.
The simple form right now that we're already dealing with in our world is social media, because a lot of us, a lot of people spend 4, 5, 6, 7 hours a day, more even on these things. And, another Stuart Mill quote, sorry, I have them because I was just thinking I was trying to read ahead of time for these things. But, he who knows his own side of the case, knows even little of that, basically. If you only know your own side of the case, you actually don't even know it.
Comes from Cicero. He actually channels that from which is really cool.
That makes sense. And so, in some ways, if AI is taking you along, it's also keeping you in a bubble, which is happening, I think, to tens of millions of people on both the left and the right now, because basically you're happier in your bubble.
Yeah.
I'm not happy in my bubble, by the way. I really enjoy going and like, I mean, it freaks me out sometimes, but I go onto the far left side of Reddit and I go to these other places and I want to be challenged. I want to see what people are talking about. I want to understand,
Yeah.
the other ideas on Blue Sky, as much as that's kind of a toxic place, but it's interesting to see. Even though I spend more time on Twitter or X, obviously, but isn't the AI naturally going to keep us in our bubbles based on these NPC preferences?
Yeah, I think today that is the way it works. And you get, as you said, you either get kind of an impoverished echo chamber where you don't have access to these wide and diverse views, which means you don't have access it's not truth seeking. And it actually isn't good for the development of reason. I mean, Mill makes an incredible case, chapter 2 of On Liberty, that even the wrong opinion, even being exposed to like things that are super wrong, that's what's necessary to even have like a lively impression of what's
Yeah,
right.
because it helps you correct it and helps you understand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If I say, "Hey, Joe, I think all values are relative." I think it's, you would like be hit with this and you'd like have to formulate, and it's good. That's good
Yeah.
for you to have.
You don't want to protect people from dumb ideas. You want to
don't.
engage with them.
You
Yeah.
don't. And the other good thing is, or the other thing that I think is concerning is it could create a hall of mirrors culture where everyone has a kind of a self-curated reality,
Yeah.
very convenient, ideal even.
Was it the problem is AI lets you personalize a really complex reality just for yourself that just keeps you feeling safe?
It does. I will say though, there are other ways, right? Like a provocateur AI is a really interesting concept that we're thinking a little bit about now, which is like, how about an AI that challenges you? How about an AI that like puts you out of your comfort zone in ways that you don't understand?
What percent of humanity opts into that though, versus opting into this like really soft, like nice world?
Yeah, so it depends, right? Like, so when you use a Bloomberg terminal, you actually want to optimize for decision quality.
Yeah.
When you are scrolling at night, you're kind of in engagement mode, right?
Yeah.
So what does that tell an entrepreneur? Well, it tells maybe like look at those markets first, where like decision quality actually
Interesting.
matters.
So actually, there's actually a professional needing to make a good decision, needing to understand the world. That's where you're going to get people to engage with like much healthier areas.
I think that's right. And I have this optimistic hope that it can trickle down, that actually like you can show better decision quality and we can work out the engagement. It doesn't have to feel terrible to do that. It doesn't have to feel painful. Like Socratic, dialectic actually feels quite fun. It feels hard, but like if you do it right, it's a blissful experience. So I'm hoping that can kind of trickle down.
I want to jump to just high level for people, the various approaches right now that dominate the AI discourse, right? So there's,
Yeah.
I think you define these, there's the doomsayers, there's the accelerationists, I think there's the regulators, and there's techno-authoritarians, and there's a forlist. So what do you think of each? What are the doomsayers, first of all?
Okay, so that's the most, that's the intellectual incumbent, I would say. That's the most dominant philosophy in the practitioner community. And it's 3 philosophies in a trench coat, but they're all very entangled. One is effective altruism, one is rationalism, one is long-termism. So 3 things, you might hear these terms, but you can kind of put them together and say those are like the doomsayers. And the gist of it is that AI could pose a risk to humanity and we should pause. It's kind of like Oppenheimer when he had this, hubristic awe of his own creation.
Yeah.
Or you could say like a tragic kind of Prometheanism where like we got fire from the gods and now we regret it or something like this. And so that school tends to then follow like one of the main equations. People get mad at me for saying this, but this is actually the way that a lot of folks think about it, is even a tiny probability of doom multiplied by negative infinity utils equals negative infinity.
I feel like
utils.
this is Elon's comment on it as well.
So Elon, I think, is an interesting person because he's like kind of started from this position, and then I think he's moved forward to a more positive view on interplanetary life and sort of those.
He's naturally an accelerationist himself in everything he does, but then he also has in the back of his mind this awareness of that utility, which is scary. Yeah.
And it's a very math ready kind of proposition. It appeals to those who think that reasoning is the same as Bayesian stats, or that morality can be reduced to like a currency that can be optimized.
Tell me more about that. What's immoral about the doomsayers?
Well, so I mean, the key premise is that moral questions can be reduced to a thing that's called a util, or to a common currency. This is something I would reject. In other words, I think that endemic in morality is the idea that you have a bunch of good things that are incommensurable. They can't be calculated, like courage, courage in battle, familial love, religious observance. How the hell do you compute those things? You can't. They're actually sharply heterogeneous goods. And I think because you can't do that, the sidestepping move that a lot of these folks do is they say, well, the thing we really care about is human life. We're just going to focus on human life. It turns out there are a lot of other human goods than mere life that we should be focused on.
Yeah, we don't want to be in the matrix.
Yeah, and so it's that. So I reject those premises. The other thing is that we're very bad at predicting the future. Like the car came around and then it sparked the sexual revolution. Who predicted this? You know, when you have complex socio-technical systems, it's very hard to predict. You can pretty reliably predict like along the lines of scaling laws where like you add some compute, you get some performance. That's a narrow technical prediction. But then predicting within a broader socio-technical system, impossible. So this group has, I think, very low epistemic humility.
And let's go to the accelerationist. So this is generally seen as a positive thing, but I think I think you say these people are pushing like towards like AI supremacy and innovation without considering some of the nuances of human flourishing. What do you mean by that?
So I think like the role of optimism, the power of markets, like I think I'm totally there with it. I think
a lot of times this is a reaction to the doomsayers where we're just gonna, this is broken, so let's just accelerate and let's not let these people hold us back and block us from fixing things. So that's where it comes from. But what are they missing?
Well, so I think they are taking this idea that, and I'm referring now to the more orthodox accelerationists, that hey, you know, human life began a certain way. It began because we spontaneously evolved some ability to, you know, absorb and harness energy. And I buy that. I think that's a plausible explanation for how human life started. Because it started this way, the logic goes, this is the ultimate measure. Our ability to absorb and dissipate energy.
This is where Noah talks about Kardashev level civilizations. Exactly. It becomes almost it's like a quirky thing to obsess over.
Yeah, and so it becomes like the ultimate goal is almost the ultimate end of human life is a kind of technological progress, or it's a progress in harnessing energy. I think that completely confuses the means with the ends. I think technology is incredible equipment for human flourishing, but
we do want to be a higher level of Kardashev civilization. That's probably very great because it gets greater ends.
And we want better technology and better energy. I agree with all that. But to say that that is the ultimate end of human life, that's what we move towards, gives you these kind of sinister conclusions, which is like we should pass the baton to this higher, better intelligence if we can. You know, in other words, like
that's a pretty scary
there's not a human good beneath it that we should intrinsically
you want to be pro-human as part of this